I'm Farhandala, transformational trainer, and welcome to Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast, an invitation to take the journey towards your deepest self. It is my intention to inspire you to connect, move, and meditate. We'll tap in, tune in, and dive in, and together learn and reflect from authentic, real, and transformative conversations. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. My guest today is Vijay Wadhavan. Vijay is the founder and creative director of ILA, a queer South Asian fashion brand he launched just a few months ago. Born and raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Vijay grew up in predominantly white spaces, but always felt a strong connection to his South Asian heritage. He studied business at Dalhousie University and has spent the past several years working in marketing research and consulting. His work is rooted in curiosity, creativity, and a deep interest in understanding the nuances of identity, culture, and the human experience. Whether he's designing garments or diving into a research project, Vijay is always drawn to the intersections and in-between spaces where culture meets queerness, data meets emotion, and tradition meets reinvention. Vijay, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my God, the pleasure is mine. I want to begin this conversation with your coming out journey, and I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
When I see the person in front of me and your posts on Instagram, I think, wow, that's someone that I really want to get to know. I want to know their story because only a person who presents themselves the way you do has had to have a very interesting evolution of sorts to becoming the person that you are today. I see,
Yes.
I see a person who's confident in their queerness, but also celebrates all their uniqueness. You are trailblazing, you are bold, courageous, and love storytelling through their words and also fashion. Two things that I also love too. In 2024, on my vision board, at the very top, I set the following intention. And that is, I am stepping into my wholeness and living my life to the fullest expression of who I am, authentically and unapologetically. And you, Vijay, are definitely doing that. And so you are a source of inspiration for me. It took me almost 53 years to get there, and it's still a journey for me. But tell me and tell us all how you became the person that you are today.
Well, thank you very much for that kind intro. And uh, I definitely it's been a journey and an ongoing journey. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that everyone's on their own journey, that there's no timeline or no one's kind of behind or ahead. And I know that I can get caught up in that sometimes. And it's important for me to kind of remind myself and to ground myself that like everyone is uh, doing the best they can and coming into themselves in different ways. So I'd say that my coming out journey has been uh, one that's been a very like up and down. When I first came out, my parents were uh, kind of in a bit like let's say disappointed to put it lightly. So it wasn't an easy coming out from the beginning with my parents, but um, that journey to where they are now, where my parents are very accepting of kind of who I am, very welcoming and loving to my partner, Jayshul. That's something that I never would have ever kind of imagined possible in when I was first kind of coming out. I think my journey in terms of coming out has really been around how do I kind of live life in a way that feels like I'm living life for myself. And in a lot of ways, culture and society pushes us in back into the closet even when we come out. They want us to kind of conform. They want us to, take on very heteronormative kind of positions and ways of living and building family, community, that kind of thing. And I think one of the things that I love so much about being queer is that you actually have full reign to kind of do whatever you want. There's no right way or wrong way of being queer. And so for me, having chosen family in my queer community has been such a blessing because my chosen family has been there for me through the times where my family wasn't able to be there for me. And so I think my journey in terms of coming out, if you talk to some of my friends, they'll talk about like I have these like periods of life where I kind of for 2 or 3 years I'm this person, and then I kind of evolve and change. And so I feel like there's multiple iterations of me. So if we've met in the past, you may not even recognize the person that I am. And I think for me, that shows that I'm kind of growing. And I think also hopefully gives permission for people to kind of look outside of what they've been and take away those narratives of like, this is who I should be, or this is who this is who I've always been. And so I need to kind of continue on that journey and really give yourself the freedom to explore and figure out what makes sense for you in your life in this moment, and be okay with that being different from what you may have imagined. My life right now is nothing like I imagined when I was a child. But I'm so grateful for all the life and experiences that I've had that like, if I hadn't been open to those things, I think, I would obviously be in a very different place, but I think I would be much less, comfortable with myself, happy with kind of who I've become. So I think coming out is a journey. And I always talk about coming out too as, we often talk about queer people coming out. I think everyone comes out in some way or another, whether you've decided to take on a new career path, or you've made a choice to, have a non-traditional kind of relationship, even if you're kind of hetero. I think that everyone is going through their own coming out process. And so it's important for us to also think about coming out as more of this like kind of holistic thing versus something that only queer people kind of do, because I think that also brings in a level of empathy from people who are not queer to understand what it means to kind of come out, what it means to be living in your truth.
I love that. And I love how extrapolated the idea of coming out to all populations of people and through different experiences in our lives. And I feel that, through that coming out journey, there's this fear that sits within us. And then when we get to the other side of that fear, there's something waiting for us that's unexpected, and it's beyond liberation and freedom. It's this feeling of truth, but also coming into owning who you are and being able to be yourself in a way in which you didn't even realize was possible.
Absolutely. And I think, just one more thing that I've learned to appreciate about being queer, and I'm kind of the first queer person in my family. But it's created a space for conversation and opportunity to discuss what does it mean to kind of live in your truth, and like give people in my family who are maybe a bit more conservative or traditional, give them that permission to kind of explore and be curious about who they are. I think I've always been a very curious person. And so I really want to encourage people, through fashion and through, other means, to really like put yourself out there, allow yourself to experiment. Like nothing is ever really that permanent. And so just being able to kind of play with kind of your identity and who you are is a really freeing experience. But when you do it, it's very infectious, because people see how, when you come into your truth, how different you are. Like if I look back at myself 10, 12, 15 years ago, I was a very like shy person. I would never, I could have never imagined kind of this life, but being open to those things is just a really important thing for everyone to do, I think.
Yeah, great point. And you launched your very own incredible, unique fashion line for men called ILA. And when I first saw your post, I thought, wow, I've never seen anything like that. What does ILA mean, and how did it come to be?
So ILA is a fashion line that I started because after COVID, my fashion budget changed from work clothes to being able to actually buy fun clothes. And so because I wasn't going into the office, I didn't have to spend money on suits and, traditional kind of menswear. And so, but I've always loved fashion. And even in my suiting and things, I've always kind of chosen bolder patterns, different colors, that kind of thing. And so I was able to kind of shift some of my money to go and buy more like, I guess like things that I would wear out to kind of parties and things like that. And I was able to experiment with different silhouettes, and that's really what inspired me to think about ILA because I would always buy these clothes, and while they were fun and cool, I always in the back of my head was like, I wish this was like in a sari fabric, or I wish this had some more like sequence work. And South Asian fabrics are so beautiful and so, just diverse in terms of like the artistry that goes into them, the different types of fabrics that are made. And so that's really what sparked the idea. And my goal with ILA was to create a fashion line that was gender inclusive. So it was kind of for all genders, all sizes. And ILA is a name that was inspired by a Hindu, I guess, deity or like part of Hindu mythology. There's a character named ILA, and that character goes from man to woman very seamlessly. And so what I'm trying to bring in through my fashion is this idea of duality and an idea that like everything is kind of on a spectrum. And so you'll see in the way that I design my clothes, there's a lot of like contrast in terms of like patterns and fabrics. And I really like that because I find that when you have that duality, it really allows you to kind of pause and like kind of observe what's happening. And I think in those moments where you like something catches your eye, you become very present for that one kind of moment. And I think we often go through our lives not being very present. And so I wanted to use fashion as a way of like creating those moments of pause where people could observe something and look at something and it looks different, and maybe it looks beautiful to you, maybe it looks, unique, whatever it is, but it's a way of kind of creating that pause. And I've been really lucky with the response that I've gotten so far in terms of people really liking the designs. But I think every time I go out in one of my outfits, there's like some random person that like will come up to me and say like, I really love your outfit. And like for me, that's something that like I never really experienced in the past. And so I want more people to kind of experience that, because I think I'm hoping that my clothes can kind of bring us a sense of confidence and an embracing of like what I find often South Asian queer people, especially, they find themselves in this in between. They're not South Asian enough, they're not white enough, they're not queer enough, they're not hetero enough. Like, and we're always trying to kind of stand kind of on these lines and what's the word?
So to define
I guess
ourselves,
like balance, and find balance in a way that kind of pleases people. And I think that this is just a way of like really embracing who you are. You're queer, you're South Asian, and you get to wear really kind of cool and unique pieces that help to kind of show to the world kind of who you are.
yeah, and I think you're breaking the idea of, when you walk into a department store, you're very clear on what is the men's section and what is the women's section, and you go into where children's clothes are as far as infants, and the pink clothes are for the girls and the blue are for the boys, and all of those messages are sort of like infringed upon you, and then like enter you, who's like saying, no, let's deconstruct all those ideas, recreate fashion for everyone. You can wear whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable in. And with your designs, your colors, the inspirations, the bringing in the South Asian influence, you're getting a lot of attention, as you said, not just through, when people see your outfits, but did you not recently get an acknowledgement from a Paris Hilton?
Yes. I was
I mean,
very
you're just
lucky.
a few months out of the gate and already you're in
Yes.
front of Paris Hilton. So tell
Yeah.
us what happened there.
So I have a friend, Dustin, who is the Paris Hilton super fan and has been since I've known him. Like, and we grew up together actually in Nova Scotia. And so um, he's he's kind of a content creator and a fashion influencer in Toronto. And he's been seeing my posts, and he really likes like the fabrics that I'm using. He really likes sparkle and mirror work and all that kind of stuff. And so he was invited to go to a Paris Hilton launch party for a skincare brand that she's just launched. And um, he reached out and asked like if I would be open to designing something with him. And so we designed a jacket together, and Paris Hilton saw it. She really loved it. And it was just really cool to also get feedback from Dustin, because he was in New York, on just like the compliments that he got on the jacket and how much people liked the design and that kind of thing, and that was very like affirming, just because he was around a bunch of fashion people. And so having those kind of moments where like I'm building something and sometimes it feels like, oh, I don't know if this is going to actually work. Those moments are really important to have, where you get that like, okay, yes, this is going to be something. I just need to give it some time, because I can be also a very impatient person sometimes. So I need to remind myself of that.
Okay, well, I want to talk about your description of one of your designs called the liminal suit. You say the liminal suit is inspired by the word liminal, a space between what was and what's becoming. The liminal suit lives in the in between tradition and disruption, formality and play, opulence and restraint. It's the kind of piece that makes people pause because it looks like nothing they've seen before. And in that pause, something shifts. They see you more fully, and maybe they imagine more for themselves too. Because when design dares to be different, it invites the world to dream bigger. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, that was the draw for, wanting me to have you on this podcast. I see your designs and I thought, this is different. I've never seen this before. It's unique and I appreciate it, as I'm sure many will, and they already have. Your every thought that goes into your creations. Everything feels so intentional. What is it about the space of in between that the creation of this suit and all your designs is a source of inspiration for you?
Yeah. So thank you for reading those things, because I do put a lot of effort into thinking about these things, and I am quite intentional with the way that I design clothes. I think one for me, I'm trying to embrace the idea of slow fashion, and for me, slow fashion means being very intentional about what I'm designing and how I'm thinking about how a person's going to be wearing the clothes. So where are they going to be able to wear it? How, like, in what settings are they going to be able to wear it? Are they going to be able to pair it with like many different pieces that they may already have in their own closet? And so, and the reason that I talk a lot about the in between is because I think, particularly in South Asian families, we often talk about things as like right or wrong, black or white. Like it's a very like it's it, we're it's like a choice of like A or B, and it's not understanding kind of again that spectrum that exists in every human. And so what I really wanted in my clothes and the way that I think about design is I think about it in terms of people want kind of balance, and I find that bringing in this idea of kind of duality within clothes, but in a way that is kind of honors South Asian tradition and fabrics and that kind of thing, allows people to kind of, I guess, like just think about their life in a bit of a different way. And I think of fashion as kind of wearable art, and I think when I say that to some people, people kind of roll their eyes and say like, okay, this is just. But I really do think that like this is something, fashion is what you wear and how you're perceived, and people see what you wear. And I think people are challenged in terms of sometimes styling things, and so I'm trying to do content around that, on my page, where I can show you how I style my pieces in different ways. But it's really like trying to find a way to embrace the kind of the duality and spectrum that life offers, because I think it's really in that kind of in between space that exciting things happen. When things are so black and white, they're just there, right? Like it's not as exciting, it's not as creative. And I think we're moving into an era with AI and everything else that's kind of happening, where creativity, excuse me, creativity is going to be the thing that really pulls us out and allows us to thrive. And so I want people to be able to see things differently, like look at a suit jacket and be like, oh, I never would have paired those two things together, or I never would have thought to like split it down the middle and the back and like have one side of the blazer look a certain way and another side of the blazer, or I would never think to put these like really intricate fabrics as sleeves and have the rest of the shirt as like a very sheer kind of fabric. So that's like one of my other shirts. And so for me, it's like, it's about creating opportunity for people to see possibility. And that's really what I like, possibility, not just for fashion, but for their life and like what's possible. Oh, wow, I never thought that this was possible. And in their mind, maybe they've been thinking about something that they've wanted to create. And they thought like, oh, no one would ever buy that, or no one would ever, wear that, or whatever it is. And maybe it gives them that inspiration to kind of go and create. And I think like this is like the thing that I'm like really on right now is like trying to push people to tap into their creative side. I think a lot of people think that they don't have creativity because they're not a visual artist or whatever. And I don't believe that. I think that everyone has creativity within them. I just think that it's been pushed down for a lot of us, especially in South Asian communities where we've been pushed to science and math and be a doctor and engineer and all of these types of things, that we've really pushed down those creative parts of ourselves. And, I was back home for Mother's Day weekend, and we were watching some old home videos, and I look at myself as a kid and how creative I was and how much I had pushed that down, but only like through my coming out process have I been able to kind of re-embrace that creative side of myself. So
Yeah, and you're doing a great job. I want to talk about the jacket I'm wearing.
yeah.
You can check this out in the video version of this episode. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, do check out the YouTube episode so you can see the details of this jacket, and also on Vijay's Instagram page. And I'll post the links of all of that in the description section. But what I'm wearing is called the Satrangi jacket. And you say it is inspired by the word satrangi, meaning seven colored, and often used to evoke the beauty and symbolism of a rainbow. This series of jackets are a celebration of color, complexity, and contrast. The Satrangi jacket embraces the spectrum of presence and possibility, the fixed and the fluid, tradition and transcendence. These jackets don't wear the same on anyone. Like light through a prism, they reflect something unique each time because they become a part of you, a statement, a story. Can you talk about the versatility of this jacket and the many different ways and places or events that, I or anyone could wear it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Satrangi jacket, I named it the Satrangi jacket because it's going to be a signature piece within my collection. I think that cut of jacket is something that looks good on basically any body, and is very versatile in terms of what you can pair it with. So I think you're wearing it with a t-shirt right now. I've worn it with a t-shirt. I've worn it with silk, dress shirt. I've worn it with like a collared dress shirt for work. And the reason I named it Satrangi is because I'm going to be doing these in very small batches, and each jacket and each fabric that I choose will be available only for like that set of jackets. And so it's going to be, by the time the collection is done, or as it kind of goes on, you'll see that I pull in different colors, different fabrics, different types of embroidery or kind of handwork into them. And so I'm trying to create a piece that is something that someone is drawn to and says like, I need that jacket, because it like the color is either their favorite color and they have never been able to find a jacket in that color, or they really love that the sequence work on it, whatever it is. And so it's going to be a small batch signature piece. And so what that allows also is that I want people to have unique pieces, just as people talk about art, and you have a limited number of pieces that an artist creates. I want people to start thinking about fashion in that way as well. And so this jacket is meant to kind of just wear to a party. I've worn it to work meetings where I've facilitated meetings with clients before, and it's a great conversation starter too, because people haven't seen fabrics like that before. And so I've also worn it out to a bar. So there's so many different places that you can wear it, and it's nice because it's a layered piece. So you can wear it, on top of a t-shirt like you're wearing it and keep it on all night, but you can also take it off if you have something else underneath that you want to kind of show off. So I'm really hoping I've had probably the most positive reception to these jackets, just in terms of people being able to see themselves wearing it. I think some of my other pieces maybe a bit out there for some folks to kind of imagine themselves in. And my job is to help them see themselves in those pieces eventually. But I think that this is just something that like people see and say like, oh, I can totally see myself wearing this too, whatever, whether, and I've paired it with actually desi clothes before too, where I've worn like a kurta pajama and put this on top of it. And it just adds like a different layer on top of something that is, maybe traditionally a bit more plain. And so there's a lot of opportunities to kind of wear this and use it in different ways that allow you to also show like who you are as an individual and like bring out that individual side of yourself and that the multifaceted parts of ourselves, right? We're different people in our families and in our friend groups and all of that kind of stuff. And so this is a way of allowing yourself to express all of those sides of yourself in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because when I first put it on, I felt like I would wear this to like a royal wedding because I felt like Bollywood royalty when I put it on. But the idea that I could wear this at a wedding, because it does have a celebratory sort of feel to it, right? Like it does feel like something I would wear to a celebration. But when you said that you could wear it to a corporate meeting and at work, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it does display a huge diversification of its versatility and in more ways than I thought of. So thanks for sharing that. Um, does the seven color imply also, a theme of inclusivity? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and like you said, this is made for everyone. So how important is inclusivity for you, and who is ILA being inclusive to?
So I would say that inclusivity is like the foundation of my brand. And it's been a very kind of intentional process for me to be as inclusive as possible. And I think we often talk about inclusivity in terms of race or gender. I'm also thinking about it in terms of size. I'm also thinking about it in terms of age. And I think like I want people, again, across the spectrum of different ages, different gender expressions, different sexualities, and I think I talk about ILA as like a queer South Asian fashion line. It's not just for queer people though, but I'm designing with queer and trans people at the center of my design. I think that clothes are designed for straight, hetero, cis people everywhere. That I don't think that they need it as much. I'm trying to center the experience of queer and trans people in terms of finding ways that people can feel themselves in their clothes and like feel like their clothes represent or help them express who they are. And so inclusivity is like a very important part of my brand. And I'm always looking for more ways to be inclusive. And so, as I kind of build out my collections and think about new pieces, one of the things that I'm also thinking about is like a sustainability kind of angle to it too. So what are some pieces that are able to be kind of built for many different sizes so that you can share, like with your friends, and like how do you kind of allow people to kind of try on kind of different things and yeah. So I would just say like inclusivity is a very, very important tenet for me. And the rainbow was Satrangi being kind of representation of the rainbow was also just an acknowledgement to my queerness and my queer identity because of the rainbow flag and pride flag and all of those types of things. And so you'll see kind of in the coming months, some of the new pieces that I'm trying to do are also really trying to lean into that kind of idea.
I'm really glad that you mentioned age as far as your importance for inclusivity. For someone in my 50s, I don't know where to shop, to be honest. When I'm looking for whether it's workout clothes or just general clothes, and I go to various websites, various fitness brands, all the models are 6'2", they're under the age of 24. When I walk into a store, when I see the images and the pictures, everyone is much younger, less than half my age, and it doesn't matter what the brand of clothing is. And so it's very frustrating for me because I don't feel like anyone's catering to me, and I don't really know where to go when I'm shopping. So I'm glad that your intentionality is in addressing this. So I'm going to be looking towards, ILA for, some pieces in my closet that
I would
will,
love that.
yeah, will reflect, where I'm at my age. I'm not age sensitive. I just feel like the industry is very exclusive to us, especially men, when it comes to clothing. So I appreciate what you said.
Just one thing on that too. I think you talked about like height, for example, and I like South Asian men aren't like the average height of a South Asian man is different, and so there are actually different cuts that look better on certain types of body types, and so also like I'm trying to put that into my design thinking as well. Is like there'll be some jackets that are longer and some jackets that are shorter, and it just depends on kind of like what you're trying to express. And I think for me, being inclusive of age was very important because I have a lot of friends that are kind of very diverse in age, but also more so for um, queer people who are older than me. I wanted to make sure that my brand was inclusive of them because I also recognize the efforts and the experiences and the way that they've advocated so that I can actually do this today. I don't think that this would have been possible even 15 years ago.
I
And
agree.
so I really want to like be able to honor the sacrifices and the um, just efforts and ways that they've been able to create a world for me where I can be openly queer and creating a queer fashion line, and like that's not possible without older queers. And so I think it's just really important for all queer people to remember that like you're standing on the shoulders of a lot of people who have done a lot of really important work.
Thank you. Um, I want to say I sincerely appreciate your use of fashion as a form of storytelling because that is something I too am very intentional about. I think what you wear is often an extension of your personality, your emotions. And the more I became comfortable being a gay man, the more my personal dressing style has evolved. My issue is that I can't always find what I want to wear to reflect what I want to express, right? There's a bit of a mismatch of how I feel and finding something to wear that expresses that. We've all been in that situation where we're standing in front of our closet. We have, all these clothes, and we're thinking, I have nothing to wear, right? What has been your experience? It sounds like that's a huge reason in why you started this fashion line.
Yeah, it was kind of the primary reason, to be honest, was that I was wearing clothes that I liked and that made me feel great, but it really just felt like it was missing something. And if you know me outside of kind of just in the world, you know that I love all things South Asian. So like movies, music, all of that kind of stuff. And so for me, finding ways to kind of integrate that into more quote unquote Western wear. So things that like I understand that wearing a traditional kurta or sherwani to the office is not going to be possible, but I still want to be able to represent that really important part of my identity in my clothes on an everyday basis. And so finding ways to integrate those things into my designs was really, really important. And I've had, I have those times all the time where I'm like looking in my closet and I'm like, oh, I have nothing to wear. But like, that's also why I've been so focused on the versatility of the pieces that I've been building, because I want you to see that piece and be like, oh, I can just wear that with like a different pair of pants or a different shirt, and really think about how to kind of use your clothes in different ways. And Instagram, TikTok is really great. People are so creative on fashion TikTok about how they reuse clothes or how they pair things together. And so really kind of taking inspiration from that and finding ways to kind of find fabrics, cuts, things that I think will express something about someone. So, a lot of the clothes that I design, especially right now, are clothes that I want to wear because I need to figure out if the market is going to kind of want these types of clothes. But what I'm finding is the pieces that are really kind of like resonating with people are the pieces where they can see kind of multiple places that they can wear them, where they can see how they can pair it with many different kind of pieces that they already have in their closet, and that are bringing kind of just like a really beautiful South Asian and queer kind of twist to something that they would find at an H&M, but like the H&M thing isn't really speaking to them. This really speaks to them. And so that's kind of a big driver for me.
Vijay, do you have a favorite fashion event?
You know what? I'm like, I obviously like love watching the Met Gala, and I think that this year's Met Gala
Who were some of your
was
favorites?
really, really great. I actually really loved Mindy Kaling's outfit. I thought she like really nailed the theme, and I really did like Diljit Dosanjh just in terms of the representation that he kind of provided.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but yeah, I would say that like fashion events, I find that also, let me say this, fashion events can sometimes be a bit intimidating for people, including myself, because they're so high fashion, and it's like I could never see myself kind of wearing that, and I can get intimidated by that kind of sense. And so I've always been drawn to like more online kind of like creatives that are doing different things with fashion. So they're kind of creating things that are unique and that are different, but not in such a in a space where like it feels very judgy. I guess is maybe the word I'd use. So, but yeah, I do. I love seeing fashion. Like I love seeing what people wear. I love seeing people's creativity. I love seeing how people also accessorize things. I think that's one thing in fashion that, especially as like cis men, sometimes think that like accessories aren't for them. And like I would really encourage people to lean into the accessories. I think accessories can really bring out something different in an outfit without having to change much or being able to wear again a similar piece, but by adding an accessory, you really kind of change the look. And so finding ways, and part of my plan for ILA is eventually that I grow outside of fashion into kind of accessories, lifestyle types of things, because I think to your point, what people wear is really representative of kind of who they are as individuals and a way of expressing that. And I want to create more accessible ways for people to do that, whether it be through, I'm currently designing some kind of the slingback bags where they're going to be made from leftover materials from the stuff that I've already made, but it's going to be like those kind of a fanny pack type of design. So again, giving people that opportunity to like take something, even if they don't want to wear a very loud jacket, maybe they can take on a bag that allows them to kind of push themselves outside of their comfort zone a bit. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Met. I mean, that's another thing we have in common as well. And there was a huge Bollywood representation this year, I have to say, with, stars like Shah Rukh Khan being there and Priyanka Chopra Jonas, as well as others. And a couple of years ago, well, in 2017, it's been more than a couple of years, I was a personal trainer to Bollywood star Deepika Padukone. And so I worked for her for about a year and a half, and we attended all the major carpets like the Oscars, the Cannes Film Festival, and the Met Gala. And the Met was the one I was the most excited for. My job was just to make sure that Deepika looked great on the carpet as far as getting her trained. But there's a lot of people involved in getting that red carpet look. There's a huge team, and so I remember sitting in the lobby and watching people like leave for the event and come back, and I saw Rihanna when she was returning from the event, and
Oh wow.
yeah, and I turned to her and I said, "I love your outfit," and Rihanna kind of looked at me and was like, she smiled and nodded and then kind of got into the elevator and whisked away. But I was like, this is a dream. Like, I've got the best seat right now.
That's really cool.
Because we stayed at the Carlisle Hotel, which is where most of the celebrities who attend the Met
Mm.
were attending. But my question to you is, are there any celebrities you're kind of keeping an eye out as to who you want to see in your clothes and styled in ILA?
Yeah, for sure. So one of my um, kind of dream celebrities to have in one of my outfits is a singer by the name of Ali Sethi.
I
He's
know him well.
oh yeah. So I really love his music. I've been like a Coke Studio stan forever, and he's performed some of my favorite Coke Studio songs and just other music that he's created. Um, but his style is very unique. I find that he's very like adventurous with the way that he dresses himself. So that's definitely one person. I would love also like Lily Singh is doing some really cool things with fashion and the way that she's just expressing herself. I don't know if you follow her on Instagram, but like she does a lot of kind of androgynous type of work where she might be wearing like a suit and tie, but she's doing it in a very different way. So that's definitely another person that I would love to kind of dress. I have a bunch of even there's a Instagram content creator by the name of Taha. I really love his content, and I find that his message is really inclusive. He speaks up for a lot of marginalized voices, and that's really something that I want my brand to kind of do as well. And so finding people who are bold in their action to wear kind of bold clothes, I think is just a way that I want to kind of bring my brand to the world. And so those are kind of three that come top of mind right now.
Yeah, all very, incredible people, I'm sure, that would be to work with. And I would love to have Ali Sethi on this podcast as well. So let's put
Oh
that out
yeah.
into the universe.
Yes, let's do that. That would be
Let's do that
amazing.
and let's manifest that. You style him, I'll talk to him, and
Yeah,
together,
that would be amazing.
we'll do great work. Yeah, I think in another life, maybe I would have a career in fashion because I love it and I really get into it. One of my favorite events that I go to is the Gentleman's Christmas party every year here in Toronto, where approximately 2,000 gay men come out in their best dressed outfits. It's a fundraiser initiative where, it's a toy drive for Toronto children. And I start in September, I kid you not, creating a Pinterest board, start looking at different looks and what, might inspire me. And I look at, different designers, what they're coming up with. Now I have ILA to look to, which I'm excited about. So tell me, what do you love about design and being a designer?
It's a great question. I also love that event, and I'm really hoping that I can get a few people wearing my outfit at that event because it's really like the perfect event for my stuff. So I'm looking forward to attending in one of my in one of my outfits, but also seeing some folks in it, or yeah, in my pieces. What do I love about design? I love about so I've always been a very like visual person in terms of like color and seeing kind of things like even from like an interior design perspective and thinking about things in kind of a different way. What I love about design is that there's no right way of doing it. I think that like everyone can create their own style. Everyone has their own way of putting things together in a way that makes sense for them. And so what I really love about design is that there's no one way of doing it and that you can take inspiration from different types of design. So one of the things with ILA that you'll see is that I'm using what are traditionally fabrics that are used for, let's say, more traditional types of garments and integrating them in a different way or reimagining them in a different way. And I think that design is a way of exploring kind of who you are and finding ways to express who you are in different ways, whether it be the way that you decorate your house, the way that you wear your clothes or what clothes you wear, the way that you do your hair, like all of that is design. And so I think that things that are aesthetically pleasing to look at are just like, for me, I'm very drawn to those things, but my idea of aesthetically pleasing is very different than other people's. And so I really like just being able to kind of take inspiration from other people, see what other people are doing, and then put my own kind of twist on it.
Mm-hmm. I want to shift gears just a little bit. On May 5th to 11th of this year was Canadian Mental Health Week, and you shared your personal journey in a post on LinkedIn. Specifically, you talked about what it meant to unmask, and I want to share a quote from your post. What masking has looked like for me, before I ever had the language for mental health, before I knew words like anxiety, depression, or ADHD, I was already an expert at masking. It was something I learned very young as a way to protect myself and stay safe. As a queer, racialized person, I grew up hyper aware of how I was perceived. I learned early how to shapeshift to avoid judgment, to neutralize my voice. manage my emotions, and say yes when I really meant or wanted to say no. I worked hard to appear, quote, put together, unquote, even when I was sometimes quietly unraveling inside. I understand now that this wasn't just about identity, it was about survival. And first of all, I I want to acknowledge you by saying that I see you and I'm witnessing you in your mental health struggles. And this is another example of my admiration for you. I think this post will help a lot of people to be seen and also to normalize the conversation about mental health. And so my question is for you is two-part. Can you please elaborate on what is unmasking? And secondly, does your creativity, style, or the way you dress play a role in unmasking for you?
Wow, that's a great question. And thanks for reading that article. I actually wrote that article kind of on a whim. I realized it was mental health awareness, and I'm a big advocate for mental health, and so I wanted to write something that reflected my experience because I think that type of vulnerability allows other people to recognize things in themselves, be comfortable with themselves, acknowledge the challenges that they might have. So I put it together, but I've had a really positive response to that article. So thank you for reading it. Um, unmasking for me is, and I think as South Asian queer people or queer people in general, but I'm going to speak from my South Asian kind of experience. We're told like, look like this, don't do this, do that, make sure that like the aunties think that you're okay here and that the uncles aren't saying anything here. And there's so much that's like in our culture that tells us to cover up who we actually are. And I think that unmasking for me is allowing myself to shed those masks that I've had to put on throughout my life as a way of like placating or making other people comfortable. And unmasking for me is about making myself comfortable with who I am. And I think there's a lot of internal challenges that we have when we don't feel aligned to who we are. We feel like we're living for other people. We feel like we're doing things because other people are telling us to do those things. And every time you put that mask on, it becomes heavier and heavier and heavier. And so I think that South Asian culture doesn't talk about mental health as openly as we need to. We need to destigmatize conversations around mental health. Mental health challenges exist in South Asian communities for numerous reasons, not to mention the trauma of kind of colonialization and all of that that's happened to so many of our past generations of families. So I would say that that's kind of first what I think about as unmasking is allowing yourself to be seen for who you are. Now, there's times and places where you have to put your mask back on, again, for that safety purpose or for that survival purpose. And so I don't shame anyone who has to do that. I understand that there are, but it's more about finding more and more opportunities and putting yourself in environments where you don't have to be masking all the time. And I think that that's really important, is to be intentional about who you're surrounding yourself with, the messages that you're surrounding yourself with that allow you to unmask in a safe way and also in a way that is really affirming to kind of who you are. And so I'm really lucky. I have many friends who are mental health professionals or activists who have like educated me on this, because this was, again, not part of my vernacular for a really long time and something that we never really talked about in my family, but something that I constantly talk about in my family now because I want this to be a central conversation, because it's really important that if one of us is in mental health crisis, that we're able to respond in a way that is like not just, oh, it's going to be okay, just be happy, it could be worse, right? Like those are not helpful things to hear when you're struggling with your mental health. And fashion for me definitely has been a way of unmasking. I would say that it's like it's allowed me to be more exploratory with my fashion. It's allowed me to be more curious about my gender expression even, and the way that I like have been pushed away so much from feminine things. Like as a child, it's like that's what girls do. No, you don't want like flowy fabrics, all that kind of stuff. Like I love that stuff. Like I grew up playing with my mom's saris and dupattas and things like that. And so for me, it's like trying to find ways of having your fashion speak to that almost like inner child. And so I've tried to do that in a lot of my clothes by bringing in nostalgia through the sounds even that my outfits make. So I have some pieces where I've put like gunguru bells on the bottom of the the bottom of the pants, for example. And so when you're walking, you're hearing the small kind of sound of gunguru bells as you're walking. And for me, that sound is so nostalgic. And so finding ways to kind of build that into my design has been really intentional, but also a way of, yes, it's a way of unmasking. It's a way of saying, I am South Asian, I'm queer, I'm whatever that identity piece is for you, and however that kind of you can express that through fashion. But I think fashion is a really important part of that. And I think sometimes can be undervalued in terms of the value that fashion brings to our lives in terms of our identity and our way of expressing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And you further go on to say in this post, in today's world, I think the thing we're missing most is authentic connection. We've become so focused on how we come across on LinkedIn and Instagram, which awards we've won, how perfect our vacations look. But this week, I invite you to try one small act of unmasking. Express the honest way you are feeling. Ask for the support. Let someone in. Yes, it might feel scary, but it could also be the beginning of something liberating, not just for you, but for the people around you who are quietly waiting for permission to do the same. And now I look towards you, Vijay, as a source of inspiration for using the way I dress as a form of unmasking. And to sort of wrap things up, my final question is, what advice do you offer today for someone who isn't sure where or how to begin to use the way they dress to begin unmasking?
I would encourage people to think back to a time where they were, everyone I think has that, like at least one event or experience in their life where they were wearing something and they got a lot of compliments on the outfit that they were wearing, or they felt really confident in what they were wearing. And I asked them to just go back to that moment and think about what was it about the outfit, or what was it about the thing that I was wearing that allowed me to feel that confidence, and then find ways to look for that outside. And I think I think sometimes people think that, you know, fashion needs to be super bold or, you know, super unique. And I actually don't think that it does. It's sometimes wearing a color that you don't usually wear, but that really helps your face glow, right? Like I think a lot of people shy away from color. I know a lot of people who like to wear black all the time. I encourage people, be a bit bold, go for a green or a blue, or find something that helps you kind of feel a bit different, but not in a way that makes you feel like you're unsafe or that you're going to be criticized for what you're wearing. But and slowly build up, you know, whether it be taking an accessory like a big, you know, statement ring, or an earring, or something that, like, you know, I'm not wearing one right now, but I often put like one like Indian jhumka in my ear, just as like a way of like expressing my South Asian kind of heritage. And so I think that as people want to, like, I encourage people to experiment with fashion. Like no one will die if you wear the wrong outfit. It's like nothing happens if you wear a wrong outfit. So I encourage people to kind of experiment with their fashion and find like one or two pieces that you can bring in that really make you feel confident, but again, you're allowed to wear, or that you can wear with many different pieces that already exist within your closet. Because the more that you get those compliments, or the more that you wear those pieces and feel comfortable, the more that you're going to be open to like, oh, you know what, I'm going to go and try that bold jacket that I think that like I would never be able to wear, and really like step into that kind of when you're ready. But I do think that like everyone again, is on their own evolution in terms of their fashion. But I do think that if we start to think about fashion as a way of representing who we are, you'll start to wear things that are actually representative of who you are, and not just, because it was on sale at H&M, but really because this says something about who I am as a person. And finding more ways to think about fashion in that way, I think, is just important.
Yeah, and I love how you bring it back to being intentional. Be intentional about the color, be intentional about the story that you're trying to convey, whether it's your culture, or your sexual identity, the emotions that you want to express that day. One way that I've incorporated, pieces is in my storytelling of my beloved late mother. So I will wear a piece of her jewelry, whether I'm going to a wedding event or if I'm going to my Jamaat Khana or mosque. I've taken her earrings and pinned them to my lapel or in my tie to bring her part of the celebration or the prayer or whatever I'm attending.
I love that.
Yeah, like
I love that. That's so beautiful.
She's always been a huge part of my storytelling, and she was always a girly girl. Like, we couldn't even go to the doctor's office without her wearing lipstick.
I love that.
I'd be like, Mom, you're wearing a mask. He's not even going to see it. She goes, I don't care. I'm like, all right. And then her purse had to match her jewelry and whatnot. So, to honor her and the story of the importance of who she is in my life, she's often a part of things that I wear, no matter what the occasion is, as a way of including her and celebrating.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really, really love that, like, way of, and again, very intentional, but like, it represents something, and you feel it then when you're wearing it. You feel like she's a part of you. Like, finding ways, like I'm starting to take some of my mom's old saris and think about how can I reimagine these pieces, because she's not wearing them. They're kind of sitting in the basement, and I want to, like, be able to bring those pieces to life in a different way. And so I think finding ways to do that is just, it's really beautiful, and a really beautiful way to honor your mom. So thank you for sharing that. That's really nice.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I honestly wish I started doing that when she was alive, Now it's in honor of her legacy, and it always adds an elevated feeling to whatever it is that I'm wearing, to know that she's a part of the story that I'm telling. So, Vijay, I could talk to you for hours. Like, this has been such a great conversation. It's been an honest pleasure to have this conversation with you. I've learned a lot. I feel inspired. I'll be following you closely in your career. I think of you when I'm, going to be unmasking whatever it is that I'm going to be wearing for whatever event, whether it's a wedding or the gentleman's ball, etc. I want to thank you so much. I wish you continued success. You are a true inspiration, and it's been an honest pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for creating this space. I think a lot of people listen to podcasts, they don't understand the work that kind of goes into it, and finding ways to elevate the voices of people whose voices aren't typically elevated is just really important work. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Okay. And I will include all the contact information so people can find you on social media, and they'll be able to find your designs.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm Farhan Dalla. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode of Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast. I hope today's conversation has elevated you in some way and inspired you to connect, move, and meditate. I'd really appreciate your support by following and rating this podcast. Come back soon and join me for another transformative conversation.